Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're unpacking one of the most dramatic and symbolically powerful strikes Ukraine has launched against Russia's Black Sea Fleet. An attack that didn't just destroy a valuable warship, it shattered Moscow's confidence in the sanctity of its inland waters. The story of how it unfolded reveals Ukraine's growing tactical ingenuity, exposes critical Russian vulnerabilities, and underscores how timing, patience, and precision define modern warfare. The vessel at the center of this episode was a Buyan-M class missile corvette, a sleek modern ship that combined prestige with punch. Valued at nearly $80 million, it was more than steel and electronics. It was a floating arsenal frequently used to launch long-range Kalibr missiles in strikes in Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. Each of those missiles carries an enormous destructive capability, a range measured in hundreds of miles, and a production cost that runs into the millions. To Moscow, the Buyan-M was both a tool of war and a symbol of reach, a visible threat meant to remind Ukraine that Russia could strike at will. After completing another strike mission, the corvette steamed back to dock at Temryuk Bay, a location Moscow regarded as essentially invulnerable, inland, reached by narrow channels and far more than 65 miles from the nearest front lines. Here, the Russian Navy believed its ships could refuel, resupply, and ready themselves for further strikes in safety. Temryuk Bay was meant to be a sanctuary. Instead, it would become the site of a glaring reversal. The ship tied up at Military Pier Number 2, and the crew settled into routine. Refueling hoses hissed, cooling systems engaged to stabilize engines, and ammunition crews began the slow, methodical work of replenishing Kalibr missiles into their launch tubes. Officers gathered in small clusters, toasting with vodka to celebrate another successful sortie. Fatigue took its toll. Some sailors rotated for rest, others remained at stations, but many drifted towards sleep under the false security of sheltered waters. What no one aboard realized was that danger was already closing in, not with thunderous force, but with the quiet, patient creep of a calculated plan. For months, Ukrainian intelligence had tracked Russian fleet movements, mapped patterns of port visits and resupply, and identified soft points in the coastal security net. This operation was not improvised. It was the product of careful observation, patient timing, and meticulous planning. Ukraine chose to wait for the precise moment when the corvette would be at its most exposed. When fuel lines were connected, missile canisters lay open, and critical systems were partially shut down for maintenance. Less than 10 kilometers away, a seemingly ordinary speedboat with civilian markings slid across the water, designed to blend with local traffic and avoid Russian radars and suspicion. Aboard it were the implements of destruction and a crew prepared to exploit a single, fleeting vulnerability. The approach was small in scale, but enormous in consequence. The timing was immaculate, the strike inevitable. What sets this incident apart is not only the destruction of a single warship, but the circumstances. The most dangerous place for a vessel is often not the horizon where guns blaze, but the pier where it is unready and exposed. In that moment, the Buyan-M was at its weakest, and Ukraine struck. The detonation ripped through the calm of Temryuk Bay, igniting fuel and detonating stored ammunition, turning the corvette's deck into an inferno. Flames surged skyward, black smoke rolled across the inlet, and panic swept the men and women who had been celebrating minutes before. Officers and sailors scrambled for firefighting gear and damage control, but chaos and concussion had already done their work. The pride of Moscow's Black Sea Fleet lay crippled, potentially beyond salvage, and a harbor the Kremlin had labeled secure was exposed as a battleground. For Kiev, this was more than a tactical win. It was a signal. It proved that geographic distance and sheltered bays were no longer absolute shields. Ukraine had extended its reach through unconventional means, disguise, stealthy platforms, and ruthless patience. By turning Russian complacency into an exploitable flaw, Kiev sent a message that overconfidence could be weaponized against its originators. The symbolism was profound. For months, Russia had used its naval strength to terrorize Ukrainian population centers. Long-range cruise missiles, hammering energy networks, transport hubs, and residential areas. Those attacks were broadcast as demonstrations of power. Now the narrative inverted. Russia discovered that its assets could be penetrated even in places deemed immune. Temryuk Bay, once thought untouchable, had become a graveyard of illusions. Strategically, the incident also signaled a broader shift in naval warfare. Traditional doctrines that favor big fleets and heavy armament are being challenged by low-cost, high-impact approaches. Small, fast, inexpensive platforms, whether manned boats or drones, can, when cleverly employed, neutralize far costlier systems. A single $80 million corvette can be rendered useless by a relatively modest expenditure if the operation is shrewdly conceived and flawlessly timed. That asymmetry is reshaping how naval power is projected and how vulnerable it can be. Control of the Black Sea matters enormously. It determines supply lines, trade access, and military leverage. Russia used its fleet not just for strikes, but to assert regional dominance. Yet Ukraine has repeatedly found ways to whittle away at that dominance, sinking vessels, hitting docks, and now demonstrating the capability to strike ships in ostensibly secure harbors. Each success weakens Russian operational freedom and strengthens Ukrainian resolve, while also reinforcing to Kiev's partners that their support is producing tangible effects. The psychological fallout for Russian forces cannot be understated. Sailors who once assumed the safety of rear harbors now know that danger can arrive anywhere. That realization sows doubt, increases stress, and forces Moscow to divert resources to defensive measures. Extra patrols, search layers, and hardened protection for ports, resources that could otherwise be used at the front. Ukraine's blows are not just physical, they are increasingly strategic, stretching Russian capabilities thin. From a timing perspective, the hit could not have been better chosen. Striking during resupply maximized damage while limiting the immediate ability of Russian forces to retaliate effectively. The result was a tactical knockout with strategic resonance, a lesson in how patience and intelligence can outweigh raw firepower. For the Russian public, images and rumors of such losses further erode confidence in military leadership and planning. The Kremlin may attempt to control the narrative, but a burning warship in a supposedly secure bay is a stark image that is difficult to erase. For Ukraine, the operation bolsters a narrative of resilience and ingenuity. Despite being outgunned at sea, Kiev continues to find asymmetric ways to respond and inflict meaningful costs. Those successes strengthen the case to international backers for continued and enhanced support. They also underline that modern conflict rewards adaptability and precision as much as it does missiles and tonnage. As the flames finally subsided and the wreckage of the Buyan-M smoldered in Temryuk Bay, one thing was undeniable. This war is as much about will, innovation, and timing as it is about hardware. Ukraine has repeatedly demonstrated it will not remain a passive target. It will probe, adapt, and strike where opportunity presents itself. No matter how secure a harbor seems, this attack served as a warning to the Kremlin that complacency can be fatal. The fall of the Buyan-M in Temryuk Bay will be remembered not simply as the loss of a single warship, but as a moment when strategic patience met tactical opportunity, and when a smaller power showed it could inflict humiliation and loss on a larger one. It was a demonstration that in the 21st century, the rules of naval engagement are being rewritten, and that audacity, timing, and ingenuity can tilt the balance in profound ways,